do feel afraid. So it was good. I do want to start also by saying I kind of got in on the 11th hour, and I knew that my passport needed to be updated, but then I had to put it in high gear. Long story short, I had to do all this running around, and I filled everything out, and I put extra money in it to expedite it. Got home, and I thought, man, that was easy. And I sat down at the table where I'd been working, and I saw the last page. And it said, if it's not complete, they will not process it. So I immediately got in the car, drove near the speed limit, I guess. I walked in as they were locking the door, and the guy saw my face drop. He said, that must have been very important. I said, oh, it was. He said, well, come on, I'll let you in. I went back to the same gal who was still there, told her the situation. I said, will you look and see if by chance you still have it? Otherwise, I'll have to send another one. And I knew if I did that, the two would never match. She said, let me look. And she found it, and we opened it and put that last page in. That was a God thing. That was a God thing, because normally that wouldn't have happened. So I thought, yes, God is confirming that I'm going to Israel. So it was just marvelous. It was a long flight. We flew to Frankfurt, Germany, and had to get on a second plane, and then we flew into where were we in Tel Aviv. I've heard things about Tel Aviv too, but it was fine. And then we got on a big bus, and our first stop was in Joppa. And this is the house of Simon the tanner. And this is where Peter went on top of this house, and that's when he had the dream, and God dropped down the blanket or sheet, and all the animals were in it that were unclean. And he said, oh no, I've kept the law, I'm not going to eat this. And God said, what I have deemed clean is clean. And that was all in preparation for the way the gospel would then be shared with the Gentiles. Okay.
Is that the original building? I mean,
Yes, it is.
That blows my mind.
I know.
It's that old.
And this is Qumran. Some of you that have been will recognize it, and this was not terribly far from where we were. And the Holy Scriptures were found in here in jars by a shepherd boy.
The Dead Sea Scrolls?
Dead Sea Scrolls, yeah, in some of these, and we were close to it. It was amazing. When you think about how God preserved that, how many wars have there been? Before our time, but even in our day, World War I and World War II and all of that, and they were preserved. It's amazing. They had pieces from other places, and then it all synced up, was all the same. Okay, next picture. This is, let me think. I think this is, her, oh wait, all of a sudden I've gone blank. I have a little book. Y'all bear with me. This was an area. What's the next picture after that?
Rose Lane, line 1. Rose Lane, line 1, please.
Well, that's just showing. This is all probably part of the Qumran script. And this was a museum where these were protected, and we got to see them. There is years ago I went to Charlotte, North Carolina, because a group brought in some of the Qumran scrolls, and we got to see them. They're always in low light so that it doesn't damage them. Yeah, okay. Next picture. This is the Jordan River, and it was very, very muddy here. There are steps, and we had two in our group that decided they had been baptized, but wanted to be baptized in the Jordan River. But there's another place that I'll show you that as well.
Is that the traditional place where they thought Jesus was?
Yes, I think it is. Yeah,
Pictures that I've seen.
yeah.
Rose Lane, line 1.
And
Rose
this, I
Lane,
think,
line 1.
I think this was Herodian, let me look here. And you can just see the topography. I was blown away, and I think sometimes how childlike I am. You know, so often in the scriptures it talks about that Jesus went in the desert. Well, I think of the Sahara Desert, dirt. No, it's rock. It's rock, and it's rugged. But like a child, I thought sand. And it really does put a different take on it. I looked up again this morning, and the Holy Land, geographically by land, is about the same size as New Jersey. Think about how big our country is, and how small but how powerful this land is. And it is because God chose it.
And productive now.
Very productive.
Such a small space, yes.
And it is amazing to me, in the midst of this, as we saw it, then we come upon a place that was like very fertile. I mean, but majority of the land is like this.
No, is that where Herod built all of that?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Is that where that terrible battle took place?
Yeah.
All the people committed suicide
Yeah.
at the top of the
Yeah,
mountain?
yeah.
Okay.
And that is, let's see. All of a sudden I felt blank.
Lots of history took place there.
Yeah, I can't remember it at the time, but we'll go back. But yes, this was and this is part of, you know, we talk about Herod the Great. He was not a great man, but he was a great builder, and that's what you'll see. These are some of the original tiles. I think that's incredible when you think about 2,000 plus years ago. The tile is still there. It's amazing. Okay, you can go again.
Is that top room?
Yeah. Yeah. And we had to get on these cable cars to go up to the top. Isn't that amazing?
There's the cable cars.
And there's the rock. You can see how high things are. This is the Dead Sea, and there was a time when the water came to here, but it is drying up, and the tour guide said that probably by the second coming, the scriptures say that it will be dried up. Isn't that interesting? I never knew that.
What do you expect with all that salt in it?
That's right. That's right. Which reminds me,
Now, is that one with all the, where did you say that was?
this is the Dead Sea.
Is that one, all the minerals and
Yes.
anywhere you swim in?
Yeah. This is a really neat place. I know that the name of this one. Y'all hang with me. The pictures are not quite in the order.
Do you need me to find another one?
We'll come to it. Yeah, fertile living is. And then all that. This is the place where, can you make
Yeah, I
it
can.
smaller?
Yeah, I can.
There's a place Eden. Okay, could you find a place that starts with Eden? Geddes, I think it is.
Are those deer?
Yeah, these are, well, they're not deer, but they're cousins.
Yeah, so they look like them, but they're not.
Yeah. All right, is there another picture where this is smaller? 'Cause
That's
I
as small as it gets.
Okay, there is an area up in here where, you remember in the scriptures, David and Saul were always, not always, but were at odds, and Saul was trying to kill David. Well, believe it or not, I went back and read the scriptures. Saul needed to use the bathroom. Really,
Right.
it says this.
Right.
And there's a place up in here where there's a spring, and there's some greenery, and there's a cave. And Saul went into the cave to take care of his business. Well, David went in there and could have killed him, but he was still ordained. Saul was still ordained by God. So David was not going to kill him, but he cut off And then at another time, he was able to say, Saul, I had the opportunity to kill you. Here's proof that I was this close to you. But I did not kill you because you are ordained by God. And until you're not, I will honor you that way.
So is this actually a rail when you go up to see the cave? I'm trying to slow it up for you, but is that,
This is called, Eden Gilded. I was close, but yes,
is that,
yeah.
if y'all see the railing, it goes all the way up to the cave there.
But that's special to me because it just shows David's heart, even though he was being persecuted by Saul. Okay, next picture. And that's another picture of it. Of course, we had to wear hats and sunscreen because we were there in November, but it was just light jacket weather. All right, we stayed in a hotel in Joppa, and this is some of us, and we were in bathing suits with our terry cloth robes on, and we were going down to the Dead Sea to float. I said, that's the next. Here we are. And here I am, right here. This is Butch's daughter, good friends of mine. Isn't that cool? And literally they said, sit down, and you sit, and your feet come up.
More buoyant in that
Yeah.
part of water than anywhere else in the world.
It's the minerals.
The salt. And you try to go down, you can't. It's just so buoyant.
So no one's ever drowned there.
That is not necessary.
This was about 7 or 8 at night, if I
Still is
remember
water.
right. How do you get that out? It was hard to get out. I walked up to the shore and almost had to have someone to help me because it's hard to get up.
Were you wanting to watch this video? You sent it.
No, it was just, but this again is the other part of that when we went up to,
I didn't know that was.
Megiddo was the place I was trying to think.
Megiddo. Oh,
Megiddo.
yeah. I just went point two what
Yeah.
you're saying.
These are not deer, but they're close. They have little horns on them, and you know, what do you think they're going to eat? There's really not much there, but they travel around, and I cannot remember the name of them. Doesn't say.
They almost look like animals.
Well, I was about to say they're probably closer to our antelope.
Yeah, I think they are. Okay, next picture.
Oh, well,
On the
that's
other
got
side.
doubles, those were the doubles.
And
Okay.
again, this is just indicative of different caves and stuff as we were riding by. I just wouldn't have thought of Israel being like this, but it was. This is from the inside of the bus, and this is a 18-wheeler with these big things of salt. They export salt. And they also use these minerals in cosmetics and all kind of stuff. But I thought that was interesting. That's one right there and one right there. It's amazing. Back the other way. Other
I think
way.
these are the ones that are doubles.
Okay.
So, because I mean,
Okay,
I want
that's
the same
fine.
exact way, so I don't know. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah. they're
This
just
was
doubles.
an ancient city, which I thought was quite interesting. And the columns of all the things that would remain were interesting. And some of the diameter of these columns was huge, and then we would see the tops on the ground, but quite interesting. We walked and this was actually a storefront where the market was. You'll see some of that in a minute. This was our group picture at that same place. Katrina, who's a friend of Verna and me, is right here.
I didn't know Katrina went up.
Yeah, and we were the only 2 single people, and all the others were couples. These are from the church that Verna and I belong to. And we joined the people at First Baptist, and of course some of those people were from other churches as well. This is Jericho, and it is in Palestine, and it was so dirty. Also, we passed, this says, the oldest city of the world. Now, I didn't check on that, but that's what they claim. It's the first time I saw a camel. I didn't get on that camel. You'll see that shortly.
Mhm.
That's just another picture of that city.
What was the structure originally behind you?
Well, there were all kind of things there. I can't even tell you particularly, but there's like a main street. It's, it's just like we lived, except it was at a different time.
What's the mountain behind you?
I can't remember, sorry. Now, I'm a little embarrassed about
This
this.
is embarrassing. I really was talking about it.
This is a toilet. And this is a men's toilet. They didn't show us the women's toilet. But you can see some of them are closer together and some of them are further apart.
Different
And there's
strokes for different folks, right?
I guess so. And there's a little area where water flows. I mean, they figured it all out. And I really thought, I'm not sitting there, but I thought, yeah, I'm going to take a picture there.
She's demonstrating.
And their architecture was amazing.
Yeah.
And the name of this thing on the top is what, Jim? Lintel, yeah. And this was our tour guide. He was Jewish, and he had like 2-3 master's degrees. He was incredible. But he was pointing out the structure, and then there's an air vent. I mean, it was amazing what they knew back then, and how you see how it goes over the side, it supports it. It's amazing.
Gena, was he a Jew, or was he a converted Jew?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
Yeah. This is another view. This is in that city, and you can also see the tile that still exists. This is one of the stores, and they had little markets. Living in the United States, when you talk about a market, we think a big box store or whatever. But in all parts of the world, markets are just little small cubbies, really. And that was the case back then, too. All right, next picture. A lot of rock, as you can see. This was a market, particular store, and upstairs was a living place. It wasn't there now, but in time it was. So they lived upstairs, and then they came down, and this was the market. Could have been produce, could have been crafts, I don't know what it was. The food was unbelievable, and I wanted to buy some of these dishes, but they were so expensive I didn't. But the food was incredible.
What is that?
I think that's dessert, chocolate. And then this was some type of meat. One at this really incredible hotel, we had like a 7-course meal. They just kept bringing the food. It was unbelievable. Lots of fresh stuff. This was hummus. Y'all know what hummus is? Chickpeas and things that are mushed. I don't really love it, but I learned to like it. And then they put all kind of stuff in it.
I'm sorry.
This was a full moon, and this was, I think this is the Sea of Galilee. Okay. This was very interesting. This was a very high-end hotel, and this is the pool, and they built it over some of the artifacts. Of course, it makes a really interesting thing, but instead of moving them,
That's a glass floor where you can look
Yeah.
at it and see what's
so
underneath.
you could get in the pool and swim over that or stand on it. I didn't do that, but isn't that interesting? Can you see, Jim? Can you see?
Wow.
That was pretty cool. And we went to the Sea of Galilee, and the pictures are not necessarily in order, but we got on a boat, and there'll be some pictures. Go back to that one.
Just
Yeah.
yelling, oh, okay, I didn't know if you wanted.
After, remember the scriptures when Jesus called Peter, the men had been out fishing all night and didn't catch anything. Tried, didn't catch anything. And he said, throw your nets in. And there was so much fish, it almost tipped the boat over. Well, we went out on the Sea of Galilee, which is also where Jesus walked on water. And there's a picture of them throwing the net in. It was pretty cool. After we left that, we went to a place called St. Peter's Restaurant. And guess what we had for lunch? Fish. That was pretty cool. And I don't think pictures in here, but I ate it all. But
I
I
have to
just,
ask a silly question. Do they feed you fish from the Sea of Galilee?
yeah, I think they did, yeah. Capernaum is the town of Jesus. I didn't know that before I went. This is my good friend Carol Long, and we saw places where he probably grew up, and he spent a lot of time in Capernaum. That's why it's called the town of Jesus. I believe we saw the foundation of a synagogue that they think that he preached in, which is okay. Now, this is also the Jordan River in a much clearer place, and my feet are actually in the water.
Wow.
And I had blue toenails, can you see? But it's so clear, the water's probably up to about there.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting? And there's a picture somewhere. This is the Jordan River, and so we had 2 people that were baptized in that clear part of the Jordan River. This is the Jordan River where I am, so you can see how much clearer it is there. I particularly, if I were going to do that, I don't think I would have done it in the muddy part, knowing that there was a clear part. This was typical. You would see young military men and women with machine guns all over the country. He's on his phone. I think that's ironic, isn't it? He's supposed to be security and he's on his phone. This is Elijah, and he is, you remember the not Babel. Prophets of Baal, and they thought that Baal was the god, and he said, no, it's not. And if you remember the story, he built many altar, and they kept cutting themselves and hollering and praying. And then Elijah said, I'll build a fire. And they put water on it 2 or 3 times, and then God came down and burned it. So this is where that would have taken place. It's quite interesting.
Could you see the ocean? Could you see the water from that?
I think so. That's another one. This is the Sea of Galilee. This you would see a lot of places, and I actually brought a couple of pieces of pottery. But, you know, the fishers of men, and it's just beautiful. You see that a lot.
What exactly is it?
Well, it's a mosaic of the Christian symbols. See?
And that's just through the town, just in
Well, you would, yeah, this was just in that particular place, but you'd see that on lots of things. This is when Jesus, said, do you love me? And he says, of course I love you. And then, the scripture talks about feed my sheep. And this is on the water. And Peter, he said, I love you. And 3 times he repeated it. I think it's interesting because later on he denied him 3 times. I never thought about that.
Before he did.
Yeah.
That was his way of reconciling.
Yeah. And this is under an aqueduct, and this is incredible. This is a freshwater aqueduct, and they discovered it 12 miles, and it brought fresh water to another palace of Herod's, and it's on the water. This is the Mediterranean city.
Herod built that one.
Yeah, and Herod had a freshwater swimming pool on the ocean that was fed by this aqueduct. It's amazing. See
There
this?
they are. Oh wow, got to see them firsthand.
It's-
I've only seen pictures.
Yeah, it's amazing. This is the other end. It stops right here, but the trough at the top. Some people got up and walked in it. I didn't. This was Herod's palace, and this was maybe where the pool was. But there was a dock that went out several miles, and merchants from all over the world would come to that pier, so to speak. Not here necessarily, but part of that. He was a feared and revered builder. He was a great builder, Herod the Great. But you remember, he always was paranoid about the coming of the Christ child. And this is the Temple of the Mount. Carol and I are up there. This supposedly is, they talk about Christ may return up here. This currently is Muslim. So this whole area will see the Western Wall. So you've got Jewish stuff, Christian stuff, and Muslim stuff all going on. A friend of mine said they had gone here, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, and they were able to go inside, but now it's protected and you can't go in. This is the Wailing Wall, and we actually went underneath it, which is quite interesting. Yeah. Interesting, the women are separated from the men. The men are right here, and then there's kind of a wall, and there's a a female area here. And I put a prayer in the wall, we all did, and I don't know how that's even done. If someone collects, I don't know how that's done.
Tell us about the retaining wall here. The retaining wall.
Well, this is just something they put up.
Retaining wall.
Yeah. And you'll see these are some of the rabbis that have their heads covered, and some don't, or they have on just the.
But do you know the significance of what the Wailing Wall is?
Oh yeah, it's right there.
Tell them what it is.
The Wailing Wall is right here, and the Temple Mount is right there.
But wasn't the last remaining part of the temple? I mean, what exactly is the Wailing Wall? What is it?
Well, they didn't tell us that.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right.
But
I
it
think
is.
it was part of the original structure that was left from the temple.
I didn't
It was
know
left,
that.
and that's what I was trying to.
I didn't know that.
I'm
It
not-
is interesting in Jerusalem as a whole. If you will look, you can see the different types of rocks, and those are different periods of time in Israeli history.
Really trying to build.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's the Mediterranean Sea,
Sunrise or sunset?
Oh,
sunset.
so that's a side view. of
Yeah,
the-
this is the trough where some of the people were walking. Quite a huge tree. You saw me standing under it too.
Right.
But to think about how you would transport fresh water 12 plus miles to have a freshwater pool, they did tell us that Herod was quite the hospitable king, and he would invite people in. He would have done his homework and find out what they like to eat, and what kind of entertainment they like. And then often after all that, they would go for a swim, and they would never be heard from again.
Sounds like no PVC pipe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and no
This is actually-
pressure pumps.
Yeah, no pressure.
Just
This
had to use, what's the word?
What are you talking now?
On the aqueducts, no pressure pumps, you just had to use gravity.
Yeah, it was. This is the actual spot where they say Jesus was born, and it's kind of in a cave. This covers up some of the dirt. There is a cathedral on top of it, and there should be some pictures in here of that, but that's what they say. And this is a beautiful picture that someone has done of Mary and the baby Jesus, and you see there's jewels. It's very interesting in Israel because of the cultures. It was so ornate. These types of lamps were everywhere, and that is so not our culture. See, this is the cathedral above it, and you see all these lamps. It's amazing.
Trying to get that a little bit bigger.
See, can you see all this?
Wow.
There's all of those there.
And this is built over the place of what they call Jesus' birth. And I've heard people talk about it for years and years. It was not anything at all like what I expected. I don't have the years when it was birthed. This is from the Garden of Gethsemane, looking over at Jerusalem. And this is the east gate. And it is secured right now. But that is the gate that Jesus went through on Palm Sunday. And it's the gate he came back through to be crucified. And you know, in the scriptures, it all talks about the gates, this gate or that gate, and I never visualized it. But because Jerusalem is surrounded, it has gates all over the place. It's amazing, and then I got it. But seeing it was so different. I could not find my scarf, but you'll see it. See, here's Jerusalem in the back. Temple Mount on that. And this is some of the olive trees. You'll see what the significance of this scarf in just a minute. That would be me on the camera.
Zoom in, zoom in.
Oh, is that the only picture you've got of
I
me?
have others.
See how tight she's holding on.
Well, let me tell you, I had no idea how rocky
Hey,
it
hey, we
was.
should ask her if she had a surfer in her pocket.
No.
We have a story to tell you later.
But when I got there, you know, they're trying to sell you stuff all the time, and there was a guy, and he had all these scarves. And I said, I'd like to have one. Well, he put it on my head and nothing flat. Next thing I know, I'm on this camel. But my hair had been a mess the whole time. I don't know if it was the humidity. So I wore that thing the whole day, and I thought, I don't have to worry about my hair. And I'll have to tell you, I was dating Jim at the time, and we did a Facebook that night, or FaceTime that night. And I told him this was a strange woman in the Middle East who wanted to talk to him. But it matched my top.
And I still married her. I love it.
Yeah, y'all gotta hear Jim's comment. He said, but I still marry her.
Yeah. This is an area near the East Gate, and these were actually areas that Jesus taught. And some of the steps they think he actually walked on. It was, and we're facing Gethsemane, so this is near the East Gate. It was amazing to think about the Holy God who came and put on flesh for 33 years, limited by flesh. Not limited in his godliness, but he was limited by his man part, you know, by humanity. And to think, you know, when you think about who he was and who he is, but he spent 33 years, and 3 of those years, do you know who he ministered to? The broken people, us. He ministered to us. The Samaritan woman. I think about the lepers, the mentally ill, the tax collector, those that were infirmed and paralyzed. He ministered to us. Of all the things that he could have done on his time on earth, he loved mankind. It was just an amazing, and I've known that, but I thought about it in a different way. This is one of the olive trees, and they put this fabric, all of these are olives, and they go up and shake them. It was amazing. Olives were part of the hummus that we had every day. This is on the Villa de la Rosa, and they had drawn a picture of what it was like, and there were markets on each side, but it was not very wide, probably as wide as from that partition to this side. It was not wide, and we ended up going there on the Sabbath, so there were a lot of Muslims going to the mount to worship on that day. It was not the Jewish people that were there that day. It was the Muslims, and it was so crowded. Now this is the upper room where built over what the upper room was. And you remember what happened there? The Last Supper. And where Jesus washed the disciples' feet. And Peter, being Peter, said, well, wash me all over. Remember? This is a place where Jesus was kept while, I guess, as he was being beaten and his clothes were taken. And this is actually a game. You know, they talked about, they threw the dice. They think that this possibly is where that was done. It's a game board. Right here, you can kind of see some shapes. They think that may have been the area where they tossed the dice for his clothes. And that's a fairly recent discovery. And of course, this is on the wall as we passed. It was just amazing. This is also part of the Villa Dolorosa here, and you can see how the steps are so, they're still there, but over 2,000 years they've worn down. They won't allow you on some parts of it. And this is the stone in Golgotha. No, this is in Gethsemane, where you remember the pictures that people have drawn of Jesus on the stone, and he's saying, if this cup can be taken from me, they think that this is the stone, and there's a church built around it. This is a olive tree, and it's over 2,000 years old in the Garden of Gethsemane.
The stories it could tell.
Isn't that true? So this was a plaque that was in the Garden of Gethsemane. You know, he's praying. And I think of myself, you know, he said, you know, he was agonizing over what he had to do, and he knew he had to do it. And he said, before he went up, he said, just stay with me. And he came back, and they were asleep. He said, that's so us. You have stayed awake an hour, and he went back and prayed more and came back, and they were asleep again. This is actually the tomb that they think that Jesus was probably buried in.
What's the symbol in the back?
I'm not sure they didn't talk about it. It's a cross. It may be the Jerusalem cross. And she's actually got one on. This was the entrance to the tomb, and there's a little garden here. This is where they say Calvary was, but I'm not sure. And you see how ornate it was, so different than what I had expected. They had a lot in this huge church, but a lot of people waited to go through here. We didn't. It was so populated in there. I mean, you could hardly move.
Sorry, that's it.
Okay.
Okay, unless there's another set that I don't know about.
No, I think that's it.
Is that it?
Yeah.
And there are many, many more, but I tried to hit the highlights for you. One of the things that I'm going to pass this around, it will show you the topography of, you see how hilly it is, and then how low this is. I was amazed at the topography. Because again, the desert was rock, lots of rock, and they had, I was amazed when we first got there. Let me see this, and then I'm going to open for questions. You would see so many different cultures there. Can't think of it at the moment. But anyway, there were Bedouinites, I think was the name. These were people that they were still living like that they did 2,000 years ago. And there would be sections where they lived on the rocks, and it was like a complete community, but they were very much in poverty, and they're still living that way. Have their own goats and their own cows, and very interesting. Are there any questions at all about anything that I said, or anything that maybe I didn't say that you're aware of? It was a trip of a lifetime. And I'm so glad that God worked in my heart, and I was not afraid to go. To walk where Jesus walked, to think about breathing the same air, eating the same type food, being on the Sea of Galilee where he walked on water. I mean, it's like, wow. It was just so much to take in. We took a lot of notes at first, and then the tour guide said, stop looking down at your book. I want you to see and experience what you're seeing. It was wonderful. The dates, there are palm trees with dates everywhere. You would see the olive trees and the palm trees. And it was kind of like an oasis of areas where they would be all rock, and then you would see all this green, and it was man produced, you know, they would irrigate it and all, it was amazing. And then, of course, this, you saw, just a cute thing to get. And then they passed this around earlier. I would think you can share that and give it to the ladies behind you. But the food was good, we prayed a lot, we had devotions in certain places in the garden where, you remember where Jesus' tomb was, and we had communion there. I mean, it was so precious to go with people that you knew. There were 6 couples, and then me and Katrina. So we were a body that worshiped the same God, and then we were with people that we didn't know, but we all became very close. One of the nights after we had a long, long day, sometimes we had to be at the bus at 7 in the morning, having eaten and being ready to go. But they did that because we could be at a site early, and then there were just tour buses everywhere, although we were at the end of the touring season. But I mean, you would see tour buses everywhere, but we would get there first, which was really nice.
Can you imagine, the Sons of Jubal got to go several years ago, and they got to sing.
Oh my.
Can you imagine? And what was really special is every place that they went, you know, there was a song that would just evoke, and they would burst into song right there on the spot. But they videotaped it. It was just so.
I would love to see that.
So edifying. It was so awesome.
There was a church called the Church of St. Anna, which was actually supposed to be the mother of Mary. And so they had a statue of her with church, so it was like a tribute to grandmothers. I thought that was pretty cool. And the acoustics in that chapel were unbelievable. So they said to each group, if you would like to sing, and we did, and it was unbelievable. There were so many things that I knew to expect, but they showed us so many things that I didn't. But the city is very healing, you know, stones everywhere. People were generally friendly. Oh, I meant to tell you, when we were in Jericho, I saw gasoline pumps, and it had pictures of Putin. So guess where they were getting their gas from? Russia.
That's unusual.
And I was going to take a picture. I mean, we were just riding by it. I thought I'll get it another time. I never saw it.
On the gas tank.
On the gas pumps, yeah. It was very interesting. And at the Wailing Wall, there were men and women, young, probably 18 to 23, and I think they're young people, served 2 years, all of them.
Is it mandatory?
Yeah. So you would see these girls, young girls, in their uniforms with their machine guns.
And it's like our draft used to be, but I'm sure there are exceptions like,
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. But, and now I want to read everything I can get my hands on because it has come to life. But knowing the scriptures and seeing the place was better than I even had imagined. And this is my friend Kathy. She and I volunteer at Refuge Pregnancy Center. And I talked to her about it, and guess what? She's going.
awesome.
That's awesome.
So we had talked about it. You tell me that there was your pastor or somebody was talking about taking